This is the Tech Phantom, and welcome to video 15 of the walkthrough for Dark Souls, which is concentrating on lore and some secret loot. We are in the Great Hollow, and I didn't want to break the continuity of the rest of the video, so I'm doing this a little bit out of sync, but I am going to show you how to access the caves where you can farm crystal lizards in the Great Hollow, which you can get to from Blighttown. And a little bit of a lore tidbit, this tree that you descend is actually an arch tree, and if you remember at the beginning of the movie, you learn that the arch trees have been around for a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, they were around since the dragons. So there are two caves here. You can access the first cave by going on the higher branch and going all the way to the end. You can access the lower cage by very gingerly walking just to the right of this branch that we dropped onto, and you can see the lip of the cave entrance protruding through, and you fall through and you are able to make the jump. And this is a little bit of a tricky cave to get to, but it's worth it. You can farm several crystal lizards, and the lizards in the latest patch of the game have a higher drop rate for Titanite slabs. So more often than not, when I do farming and I have the covetous gold serpent ring, which you've seen the description on the video there, that's very timely. But more often than not, I will get lucky and I will get a dropped Titanite slab. So anyway, to farm the crystal lizards, you can just quit and reload the game several times. And I normally do this cave, then I go up to the other cave, which is easier to get to. And like I said, on the first cave, the smaller cave, to get to that one, you drop onto that branch and you go all the way to the end, and you can just drop onto the cave entrance, and that is a much easier place to get to. Alright, so we are back, and since we have some Twinkling Titanite, we are going to take the opportunity to upgrade and reinforce the Crest shield because of its very high damage, its very high magic damage, which is going to be indispensable for a couple of upcoming areas in the game. And this happens to be one of my favorite shields in the game once you've upgraded it with Twinkling Titanite. Alright, so the last thing that we need to do in Anor Londo, or one of the things that we definitely need to do in Anor Londo, not that we've dispatched of Smough and Ornstein, is to avenge Anastasia by invading Lautrec's world. And you can do that using the Black Eye Orb. But as you can see from my gameplay, I'm going to have a little bit of trouble using it. And I am going to take the opportunity to talk to you guys about an item that was cut from a game. And this item was another Black Eye Orb that was actually tied to Shiva of the East. If you remember back when we talked to Alvina and we joined the Forest Hunters Covenant, Alvina said that she didn't trust Shiva, that Shiva appeared to be a little bit aloof. Even though he was the captain of the guard, he appeared a little bit aloof, and he appeared like he had his own purpose, like he just joined the Covenant in order to have access to a large number of folks, or to travel. So what was supposed to happen in the game is that Shiva was supposed to be looking for the Chaos Blade, the blade of the legendary master Makoto. And if you made a Chaos Blade, which you can do with a curved sword and the soul of Quelaag, if you made a Chaos Blade and you showed it to him, he would attack you, and he would lust after it. And he was supposed to play the same role that Satsuki played in Demon Souls. And I think that is why the developers actually cut him from the game, because they cut Oscar from the game, who was supposed to be similar to Knight of Strava, So they also cut Shiba because he was too similar to Satsuki, and they just figured that they wanted to maybe create something that was a little bit more standalone, a little bit different from Dark Souls. But anyway, so Shiba was supposed to have a little bit larger role in the game, and there was a special black-eye orb that was tied to his world that you can use to invade and get the Makoto, the Chaos Blade, back from him if he took it from you. So, but there is only one black-eye orb in Dark Souls, and that is the one that is tied to Lautrec. And when we use it, we invade his world. We invade the world of Knight Lautrec the Guilty, and we are a Black Phantom, so we cannot use Estus Flasks, but we can use Humanity. And we notice that he has two Phantom, White Phantom lackeys with him. He has two sort of servants. So we don't have to kill them, we only have to kill Lautrec to proceed. But if you kill the Sorcerer, there is a chance that he will drop a tin crystallization catalyst, which at this point of the game is an incredibly powerful item. If you had the right amount of intelligence, you need 32 intelligence to use it. And his other White Phantom is a spear wielding dude, a knight. So if you notice, Lautrec doesn't fight with the shield. He fights with the Shotel and a parrying dagger, and we get a souvenir of reprisal. And if you read the description of that, that's a war trophy. That is basically the shrunken ear of your victim, and the blades of the Dark Moon cut the ears of the guilty and leave their bodies around, sort of as a warning for everybody else. Alright, so Lautrec was full of humanity, so he killed a bunch of undead. We also get the Ring of Favor and Protection, which is one of the best ones in the game. It increases your hit points and your endurance by 20%, but you can't take it off. And we are also going to go pick up his armor, but let me talk a little bit about Lautrec's lore. So the Ring of Favor and Protection and his armor is supposed to have been, it's related to the goddess Fina, or the goddess Fina's love. And the goddess Fina is supposed to have fateful beauty. So perhaps Lautrec is in love with her. At this point of the game, we don't know if she gave him the armor and the Ring of Favor and Protection, or if he made them. But later on, there is a hint that the armor and the ring was actually given to him. So either Fina is also in love with him, or because he is so devoted to him that she rewarded him with the armor of the Embraced and with the Ring of Favor and Protection. So that was a little bit of lore about Lautrec. So we will get a hint on his armor a little bit later on in this video. Alright, so now we have, now that we have dispatched of Lautrec and gotten the Firekeeper's soul back, we are going to warp back to Firelink Shrine and see if we can revive Anastasia Ovastora, who happened to be our favorite Firekeeper, because this the bonfire here in Firelink Shrine is so important because of its central location. So we return to Firekeeper's soul, and Anastasia comes back to life, and she breaks her vow of silence, which she has taken because of her impure tongue, and she tells us a little bit about herself. So apparently that's our reward for reviving her. Apparently in the past, she said something blasphemous and she was incarcerated for it. But she is very devout and believes that this is just punishment and begs us not to question her anymore. So she only broke her vow of silence to thank us for restoring her life and her impure tongue. So she is a very intriguing and puzzling character, as are all the Firekeepers in Dark Souls. So my theory on Anastasia is that after she was incarcerated for saying something blasphemous for her impure tongue, that she decided to become the Firekeeper and fulfill the role of the eternal Firekeeper as a penance for the sins, for the blasphemy that she had committed. Okay, so now we go talk to Frampt, the primordial snake, and he is just super excited. As a matter of fact, he is so excited that he is going to have a phlegm attack, and I definitely don't want to give him mouth to mouth. So I hope he recovers. But man, he is really excited. He tells us that after 1,000 years, we have successfully passed the challenges and retrieved the Lordvessel. And then he wants to take us on a journey. And he is going to swallow us or take us in his mouth. And he is going to take us through the abyss, protecting us within his mouth. So we are actually going to the abyss somewhere, or we are going through the abyss. And we know that it's the abyss because it's very, very dark, and it's reminiscent of where we fought, it's reminiscing of the abyss, because we know that the abyss is supposed to be very, very dark. So we are in the Firelink chamber, and that chamber is for the successor of Lord Wyn, and we are directed by Frampt to fulfill our destiny and placing by placing the Lordvessel on the altar. But there's just been way too much manipulation, or hints at manipulation, so I don't trust them. So Frampt, I don't think I'm going to place the Lordvessel in the altar at this point. I think I'm going to sleep on it a little bit and try to figure out a little bit more about this before we give him the satisfaction of placing the Lordvessel. Alright, so we warped to enter Londo because that was the last bonfire that we had rested at. And I should have rested at the Firelink bonfire. And we are going to go back to the Firelink bonfire, and we are going to rest there, and we are going to think about Frampt's offer to place the Lordvessel. And if you go back and you talk to him, and you can wake him up by whacking him in the head if he's sleeping, he says, "Don't treat me like an old withering snake." Well, then don't fall asleep like an old withering snake, and I won't treat you like one. But anyway, he is not upset that we didn't give him the Lordvessel, so he is awaiting our decision. And in the meantime, we can use him to break down shards if we wish. Alright, so I think what we're going to do now, guys, is try to follow in Artoria's footsteps and go into the abyss and find out the rest of the story. Alright, so we have decided to follow in the footsteps of Artorias, since we have the Ring of the Covenant of Artorias, which will allow us to go into the abyss. And in there, we hope to find more information, or just more pieces of the story that will allow us to determine if we should indeed trust Frampt, Kingseeker Frampt, and place the Lordvessel in the altar in Firelink chamber. And the reason I'm having second thoughts is because of the inconsistencies with the items that we have seen, some of the rings that we have seen, versus the story that Gwynevere told us. Because there is only supposed to be one deity left in Anor Londo, and that is supposed to be Gwyndolin, but yet in Anor Londo we found both Gwyndolin and Gwynevere. And also, Gwynevere talked about the eternal twilight, and she talked about the approaching dark and the approaching cold. Yet, Anor Londo was brilliantly sunny and appeared to be warm. So, I've decided not to trust Frampt for now, but instead to follow along with the story and see if we can get some additional information so that we can make the right decision. Alright, so we are back in New Londo, and because we broke the seal and we opened the floodgates, we notice now that the city ruins are no longer flooded. The ghosts are still there, but the water level has receded. It was at this level before, but now we can drop all the way down, and this is where we fought some of the dark raids. So this is sort of the shortcut to go back to the Dark Wraith area from Firelink Shrine if you didn't want to approach from Valley of Drakes. And we are going to cut through this temple and dodge the Dark Raids, and we are going to pass through the Fog Gate and get ready for one of the more interesting and potentially challenging boss fights in the game, and that's going to be our confrontation with the Four Kings. So, for the Four Kings, we need high magical defense and high physical defense, and Inward had given us a hint that we needed a key or a special item, and he kept talking about how we needed something that will allow us to cross the abyss. So that's a pretty strong hint that we need to equip the Ring of the Covenant of Artorias. If you don't, you will not be able to survive the abyss. And I'm also going to equip Havel's armor, because it has very high defense and very high magic resistance. So that is the preparation, and now we are ready to take on the Four Kings. Alright, so we are going to drop onto the abyss now that we've equipped the items that we think are going to be useful in this fight. And I am going to talk about the mechanics for the boss fight, and then I'm going to switch to the lore. So very quickly, there are four kings that are going to spawn on a timer, and you need to take them out one at a time. You need to take the first one out as soon as possible. You don't want to be in a situation where 2 or even 3 or even 4 kings will spawn, because you could be quickly surrounded and the fights become much more difficult at that point. And that is why I've buffed my weapon, and I've also equipped Power Within, because I want to be able to take out the kings as soon as I can. So as far as the lore of the kings, if you remember, we've learned that they were once noble and had great powers and great foresight, and they were granted a shard of the Lord Souls, a shard of the Lord Soul by Lord Wynn in recognition for their foresight. Unfortunately, a malicious serpent tempted them with the power of life drain and turned them into monsters with insatiable hunger for humanity. And we also learn from Inward that the knights of New Londo, the knights that served the Four Kings, became dark raids with the power of life drain. And they were feared by the outside world, so much so that a decision was made by the keepers of the seal to flood the city, sacrifice all of the inhabitants of New Londo in order to hold back the threat from the Four Kings and from the Dark Raids. So the four kings have the power of life drain. So they are after life. Also, the dark race have the power of life drain as well. So they're after life. They're after humanity. So we need to try to figure out why it is that they're after life, why it is that they're after humanity. Alright, so the fight, let me go back to the fight with the four kings. It is almost over. You see that they pack quite a punch, and if you actually, they can be evaded pretty quickly if you memorize their attacks, but I decided to do a little bit of tanking here, and actually a fifth king spawned. And that is because I did not do enough damage to the first four, but I was able to take the fifth one out very quickly. They sort of have a collective vitality bar or hit point, so you need to keep chipping away at them. Alright, so we've killed the kings. We were bequeathed for humanity and of the Lord Soul, and we see a primordial serpent. So looks like Kingseeker Frampt is back. But first we are going to rest in this bonfire so that it becomes a warpable point for us. So we go and talk to the primordial serpent, and whoa, this is not Kingseeker Frampt. This is actually Darkstalker Kaathe, who offers to guide us and illuminate the way, and offers to, without sentiment, share the story. So he wants to tell us an honest story according to him. And boy, what a story it is. His version of the story is that our ancestor found a unique fourth soul called the Dark Soul after the advent of fire. He waited for the fire to subside, and once it did, all was dark and the age of man had begun. But he also says that Lord Wind feared the dark because he knew that one day a human, the chosen undead, would be born, destined to become the Dark Lord. And Lord Wind sacrificed himself by linking the fires. And this is important here. He ordered his children to shepherd, to manipulate, to control the humans, and to prevent the legend of the Dark Soul from being fulfilled. And he ends up saying that Gwyn has blurred your past to try to prevent the birth of the Great Lord, and that he is the primordial serpent who serves the true Dark Lord. So that means that Darkstalker Kaathe served our progenitor and our ancestor. So far, there is only one person or one character that could be our progenitor, and that is the pygmy, the missing character from the beginning of the movie, because he was the only one that was human-sized. All the other ones were giant-sized or god-sized. So by process of elimination, the pygmy is the only one that could be our progenitor and our ancestor. Darkstalker Kaathe also tells us that Frampt is a traitor, and he invites us to become the Fourth Lord and usher in the Age of Dark. Alright, so we decided to do that just because we didn't trust Frampt, and we gotta trust one of these two serpents. Neither of them is super trustworthy. They're both kind of sneaky, but let's go ahead and let's accept Darkstalker Kaathe's invitation. So he does the same thing as Frampt. He takes us to the Firelink chamber and protects us within his own flesh from the abyss. And he also directs us to place the Lordvessel on the altar and the Firelink chamber. And just like Frampt, when we tried to get more information about it, he refuses until we place the Lordvessel. So we are going to place the Lordvessel onto the altar, because, like I said, we have to trust one of the two. We're going to choose what we think is the lesser of two evils, and we are going to put our trust in Darkstalker Kaathe. So we place the Lordvessel onto the altar, and the Lordvessel gives out some kind of a giant beam of light or fire, and it explodes through underneath Fireling's shrine. And apparently this is some kind of a key, because it is unlocking further areas of the game to proceed into. So the Lordvessel was a key, and it was only made available to the Chosen One, and it was kept at Honor Londo by Gwynevere. So once you've successfully passed a bunch of tests, you will bequeath the Lordvessel, which would allow you to go on. So now that we've placed the Lordvessel, Kaathe tells us that we must feed the Lordvessel the souls of the lords who fought with Gwyn against the dragons. Nito, the soul of Nito, Gravelord Nito, the Witch of Isolith, and the traitor Seath the Scaleless. And apparently only after we fed the Lordvessel the souls can we fight Lord Gwyn, since each one of them apparently has a portion of the Lord Soul, which is what the Lordvessel wants, or what the Lordvessel needs to be fed in order to open the way to win. Alright, so now we are going to go back to the Abyss, where we fought the Four Kings. And we're spat out of Darkstalker Kaathe's mouth. And let's go talk to him some more, because this has been a pretty unbelievable story so far. And Kaathe is going to tempt us with the Art of Life Drink. And he says that supposedly this art is from the Dark Lord himself, and it is used to gain humanity and to cast off the shackles that have been placed upon the undead, upon our brethren. So it was Kaathe, he was the one that tempted the Four Kings and brought them into the dark. And by being brought into the dark, or falling to the dark, I think means that you become undead and that you eventually hollow out. And that is why the Four Kings and the Dark Wraiths are so feared. They're so feared. They are hollow, and they lust for humanity to offer up to Darkstalker Kaathe. So Kaathe turned the Knights of New Londo into Dark Wraiths and bids them, or directs them, to collect humanity in his name. So this is going to be obvious when you examine Dark Hand, which was the item that was granted to us when we joined the Dark Wraith Covenant, the covenant that Kaathe has offered to us. So we have done that. And so again, you know, it turns out that Kaathe is a very, very sneaky, nasty snake. Is he using us as well? You know, at this point, we don't know. The story he has told us so far has been very sinister and clinically cold, but it also has been more believable and without the clear inconsistencies that Frampt told us, and also that Gwynevere told us. So it may be a story that we don't want to hear, but appears to be the more sort of believable story so far. Alright, so if you look at the description for Dark Hand, it's going to tell you that Kaathe indeed incited the Dark Wraiths to use the power of Dark Soul to absorb humanity. So Kaathe is definitely after humanity. For some reason, he's put this mechanic in place, or this mechanism in place, to get humanity collect humanity through his dark ways. Alright, so now we go back to Frampt and we confront him. And before we can talk to him, he tells us that it's obvious that we cannot be the chosen one since we did not do his bidding. And he goes back to slumber, and I guess he's going to wait for the next candidate to ring both bells of awakening. But after reading the description of Darkhand, and after the realization that Kaathe tempted us with the power of Life Drain, which you can use through Darkhand, we are left with this feeling that we may not have made the right choice when we, placed our trust with the Darkstalker Kaathe. All right, so we go back to enter Londo, and we talk to the lady of the Darkling, who congratulates us on receiving the revelation from Gwynevere. So apparently he knows that we went to see Gwynevere, and she says that we should follow her her bidding. But she kind of doesn't sound genuine. She almost sounds sarcastic. She also tells us where to find the first owner of the Lordvessel, and that was Seath the Scaleless. We've heard much about Seath the Scaleless, the traitor dragon. He was granted a dukedom for his part in helping win in his fight with the dragons. He was also allowed to pursue his research into the scales of immortality as a reward. But his studies drove him mad, and his studies degenerated into sinister experiments. So did Gwyn know about the experiments but still allowed Seath to continue with his research? We don't know that. We don't know if Seath's experiments and his madness came about after Lord Gwyn had sacrificed himself to try to link the fire and make the Age of Fire last a little bit longer. But anyway, we know that Seath is greatly feared since his archives are now forbidden and no one even dares to approach them. She also confirmed that the compound high on top of the mountains is where Seath resides, and again she tells us to stay away. But you know, the Lady of the Darkling is a little bit suspicious. She's kind of a guide, and as a matter of fact, if you talk to her, she will tell you outright that she is the guide for those who have come to enter Londo. Alright, so now we go back to the chamber of the princess, and things just don't make sense. Yeah, we're missing something, guys. So we read the Son of the Sun Princess, and there it is, clear as day. Gwynevere left alone with many other deities and later married Flame God Flan. So is she only an apparition? Well, apparently she is only an apparition or an illusion, because if we read the Dark Moonblade Covenant Ring, it says that Gwyndolin, who is apparently repulsive in appearance, created an illusion of his sister to help him guard Anor Londo. So we've been played all this time, and we take it out on Gwynevere, who indeed goes down with just, you know, a little poke from the knife. And then we hear Gwyndolin's voice, Dark Sun Gwyndolin, who comes clean and admits that the form of Gwynevere is just an image which we have tarnished. He also promises to punish us for our blasphemous transgression. And also everything is dark, so the light from the brilliant sun is also an illusion because Anor Londo is now dark. So Gwynevere was telling us some truth after all. The fire is fading fast, and with it cold and dark and eternal twilight are near. But we know that Gwyndolin was behind all of this. He was the one that was playing us, so he is going to have to pay. We are going to have to pay him a visit, and we are going to have some words with him and demand an explanation. Alright, so we are indeed in the eternal twilight of Anor Londo. Anor Londo is no longer lit. It is no longer brilliant and sunny. And we are going to proceed forward, and we are going to try to find Gwyndolin. And it appears that the Sentinels were also illusions because they are no longer here anymore. And the Silver Knight, that archer that used to rain down arrows on us, is not here as well. So they were all illusions. And instead we fight a couple of knights, one from Balder and one from Berenice. And they're probably low-ranking members of the Dark Moon Blade Covenant. And they went down pretty easily, you know, since I'm buffed with power within, and I have a great magic weapon cast on the great side. So we've opened the door by pushing that lever or tripping that lever, and we proceed. And at the bottom of the stairs, past the bottom of the stairs, we see the Lady of the Darkling waiting for us. So apparently she is upset that we attacked Gwynevere, because she tells us, how dare you produce a blade on a deity. And she cast Dark Moon Blade with the Dark Moon Talisman, so she is at least a rank 1. And if you look at the description for the Dark Moon Blades, it describes the miracle as a boost to your weapon using the rays of the moon. And that the deeper the animus, the more devastating the attack. So this is a little bit of a play with words, or play on words. So animus actually refers to your rank in the Covenant, as opposed to your motivation or to the ill will you feel to punish the sinner. Or maybe it means both, but it's definitely a reference to your rank within the Dark Moon, the Blade of the Dark Moon Covenant. And that's because Gwyndolin will increase the power of the Dark Moon Blade miracle as you offer more and more souvenirs of reprisal, which, if you remember, those were the ears of the sinners that you hunted down. So the other thing that the Lady of the Darkling did is she called Gwyndolin her master. So she is under orders, or she was under orders by him, to direct the chosen undead towards Gwynevere, to be put on this path of linking the fire and supplanting Lord Gwyn. So the great puppeteer, master puppeteer so far, has been Gwyndolin. So it is now time to pay him a visit, and it is now time, like we said earlier, to demand an explanation and find out why he is, you know, playing with the lives of the chosen undead, and why he has put such an elaborate ruse into play. So let's see if we can find out. Alright, so let me do a quick recap. So far we know that Lord Gwyn is denying our fate as the Dark Lord, that he sacrificed himself to keep the Age of Fire going a bit longer, that he became trapped in the kiln of fire, and he asked his children to shepherd or manipulate the undead through the mythical chosen undead, which is actually a myth that is going to help keep the fires burning a little bit longer and perpetuate the Age of Fire, which is what Lord Gwyn wanted. But why is Anor Londo deserted? And why is Gwyndolin the only god who stayed behind and with Frampt's help is sort of protecting his father's tomb and his father's legacy? Well, we are going through the fog gate, breaching the fog gate, to find out about that. And we were chastised by Gwyndolin as a heretic for destroying Gwynevere's illusion and trampling onto the Great Lord's tomb. And we got to look at Gwyndolin, who is indeed ugly and has tentacles holding up a very puny body. And he also wears a large crown over his pale face, over his pale face. And he called our sins felonies, and he basically passed a death sentence which I guess he's going to personally carry out in this battle that we're having with him. So he's not a difficult boss, but you do need to conserve your stamina. It helps if you have magic defense. But the most important thing is that you learn to evade that attack right there, that very fast, large ball of magic projectile, which is not blockable. So you must, you have to roll through it or evade it somehow. And that is why I like to wear the Darkwood Grain Ring, because it does help with the evasion a little bit. And Gwyndolin also apparently is a very strong, has a very strong crossbow that does a rapid fire. So it's kind of cool, and we get a close look at him, and he tells us that we are swathed in dark. So he means here that the dark gives us the power and the ability to kill him. So he's kind of confirming in a way that he thinks we are indeed the chosen one. So we also found out that he was using an illusion to make this hallway very, very long look infinitely long. So he is indeed, you know, a very strong divine sorcerer, as evidenced by the sheer amount of illusion that he is maintaining in Anor Londo. You know, he's maintaining a brilliant sun, the Silver Knights, the Royal Sentinels, and the illusion of Gwynevere. And if you take a look at the description of his crown, it tells you that it increases miracle power by 10%, and that it demands immeasurable faith from its wearer. Another interesting fact is that if you read the description of his set, the Moonlight set, it tells you that Gwyndolin had high affinity with the power of the moon, which apparently was heavily connected with women and femininity, so he was raised as a daughter. Alright, so we also just picked up the Miracle Sunlight Blade, and this was wielded by Lordwyn's firstborn, and apparently the god of war left it as an offering to his father, either out of disgust or shame before he was forced to leave Anor Londo, no longer a god. And as far as how it works, it's very similar to the Dark Moon Blade Miracle, although the Dark Moon Blade Miracle can be made stronger. We also find the shiny brass set, which tells us that the Lady of the Darkling was hideous in form, but was accepted by Gwyndolin, probably because he was also hideous. And he allowed her to become a firekeeper and a blade of the Dark Moon. So I think the lady's devotion to Gwyndolin is because he accepted her in spite of her hideousness, and he also gave her a purpose when he told her to hunt the guilty in his name. So Gwyndolin also gave the Lady of the Darkling the shiny brass set to help hide her hideousness. So that is confirmation that Fina created the set of favor and gave it to Lautrec, because both sets are pretty similar. So they were probably made by the same divine blacksmith that served the gods. Alright guys, this is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This is the Tech Phantom signing off. Until the next time.